People, let's have a seat. Come stay for lunch and you can chat, but let's sit down. I thought if we started at 10:30 that we'd all be here way early and do all that, but no. It's way after.
Oh, Judy, did you see that I answered Lopez's thing or that I wrote it? I sent it you a copy.
I didn't see it, but
I sent you a
know.
copy. I sent that whole thing
Good.
together with my little thing. He's out of town till the 18th.
Okay.
So
Won't you please take a seat?
who's there? Hi, Susan.
What a beautiful spread. This is
Isn't it?
major.
That's right.
I mean, because it's embarrassing. to
That's
have
right.
somebody-
That's right.
So
That's
try
right.
to do this.
That's right. Bobby Bilson did it.
I
Stand
know.
out. Stand out.
What's that?
The beautiful, beautiful food.
Oh, gorgeous.
We can do this.
Too bad
I did too.
well, because I have the wrong day.
Okay, move. Oh, that's good. Oh, let me move it. You're gonna move? I'm gonna. No, I'm gonna move your purse so that. There. Thank you.
All right, that's my stuff.
Come sit, people. I know, in charge. That's in honor of her birthday. No. Come have a seat. The people online, I don't know what they're doing. You can go to the bathroom. Everything's here that you could ever need. Okay, ladies, the whole world is waiting.
Oh,
The world. The world. Okay. Oh, Judy Hellinger. Again. It's good. Okay. We need your cohort. Come on
where
up.
did she go?
Come on.
And what would Murray say, right?
Yes.
Okay.
What did he say?
We're
Say I'm going right back down to where I just
bated breath. We're saying good morning. I'm Judy Farber Weissman, and Linda Levine and myself welcome you. And with delight, we thank Trudy and Bobby and myself and who else? Melinda, always, for providing such wonderful snacks and nourishment. And we encourage you, there's plenty if you choose to stay for lunch and visit with Sherry and Judith and Ken, and then play a little bridge or something. So there we are. We have each other till 2:00 or so. So the community of engagement, we are engaged, and we continue to be engaged. And my only words are words of encouragement to myself is thank goodness for this community and for our connecting with one another. And if you belong to Leo Beck or not, you're part of us, and you're always so welcome to come back. Really, we love that. And now I'm turning this over to Judith. There you go. Okay.
Hello again. There we are here. Many of you know Sherry because a familiar face, a familiar voice.
Wait a second. Let's turn our phones off.
I have to turn
Yes.
mine off too. I'll turn it off when I'm finished. I guess I have.
I don't know it.
I have to turn mine off. Well, I will. Yes, Judith.
I forgot to say it.
That kind of, Susie, that kind of leads into something I wanted to. Let's get, here comes Sid. Yay.
Siri, turn off the phone. Turn off the phone.
We're all working on it. The Kindness Day, the Kindness Day. I'm hoping when we get back to our questioning, which is before Sherry, well, when Sherry's finished talking,
Tomorrow.
that we will also think in terms of something constructive. It's so easy to blame right now, and it's more about attitude, I think, than it is about anything else. I think we can use this period, this devastating period, as a way to learn and to analyze, and that's why Sherry is so gifted, and it's the ways in which she's gifted. Here's a little bit about her background. She's co-host of Inside Golden State Politics, and I think that's a podcast, right?
It is a podcast.
With Bill.
An audio podcast.
An audio podcast with Bill.
Lately, we haven't talked about California because everything's going on in Washington.
National, right. So she's a retired professor of public policy and communication at the University of Southern California, but she's retired. She was. She's probably still very much in touch there. She's been a political analyst for many television stations.
I can't keep a job.
So there are so many that I have to read them. KCAL TV, NBC4, The Today Show, and then the BBC, where she planned programming for Scotland, Wales, and London. And she's appeared also on CNN, MSNBC, and Al Jazeera. English, since she's not fluent yet in Arabic, and on radio.
They couldn't tell.
Well, no, but if they translated it, they could tell. And on radio and in the United States and internationally. So she's been all over the place. So this is my introduction. It's her history, a very abbreviated history. I didn't go into where her doctorate is and so on, which is Claremont University, graduate university. And I just welcome Sherry, and then we welcome your take on and questions for Sherry.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. I really appreciate it. Maybe you won't do that when I finish. Is it on? It's on. Thank you. All right.
Because it's like a part of you.
It's a part of me. Too often, too long.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Judy. Oh, sorry about that, Zoomies. Okie doke. Is that better? Would you like me to sing? Well, anyway, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming by to hear not so much good news, I have to say, but it'll get interesting. I want to thank you, Judy, for inviting me here to chat, and I do mean chat. No lecture. I hate lectures. And I'm not going to smother you with yet some more Monday morning quarterbacking about the election we just sort of went through. I'm looking forward to hear from you guys, as what I think I want to do is try to examine how we got where we are today and how we got there in the wake of an ugly, nasty, wild, crazy, bitter, and electric presidential campaign. Some of my colleagues who know are far more into analysis now than I am, even though they understand what's going on, this is going to be fun, they say. This is not going to be fun. And we'll take a look at that. We'll look at where we're headed in this still divided, polarized nation, and what that means, particularly to California. We are not one of the president-elect's favorite venues. Wait till you hear it. Well, what I think this election says about this country is chilling. I mean, chilling. Where do we go from here? Well, I fear the answer to that question is even more chilling. Where do we go from here? Well, let's go. And, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy, not lecture, if you will. I'm going to take a few minutes just to check out why Trump won and to look at where Trump, the nation, and California are headed. And then it's going to be up to you to vent, to question, to get involved in the discussion. Okay, first let's look briefly, and I do mean briefly, and from 30,000 feet, let's look at the campaign. I was one of those pundits who said, well, the presidential race is going to be close, but because Kamala Harris had a superior ground game, over $1 billion in campaign contribution, a healthy Democratic registration, and a lot of enthusiasm too, as well as an opponent who seemed downright unhinged, venal, and misogynist. She's going to win. I mean, it has to. That's what the formula is. That's how you win in politics. Well, wrong. Wrong. Very wrong. This was not merely an election. This was a critical battle in the culture wars, which have been roiling the U.S. for a long while now. They were exacerbated when Trump cruised down that gold escalator in 2015. We should have gotten a hint then. I guess we didn't twice. And it really grew to a crisis level with the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol. By the time the 2024 presidential campaign rolled around, and even though many Trump voters were negative, really negative about his character and behavior, and even though the Harris campaign tried their best to shred him on the campaign trail, people really didn't care about that. I mean, okay, you got here Kamala Harris, hard-nosed prosecutor. You got there Donald Trump, convicted felon. Who do you vote for, particularly when it's clear that the political environment in this country, and even a little bit in this state, is turning just a bit to the right? I will never figure this one out. From day one, it didn't make, it makes sense to me, and we can talk about it when we get into the nitty-gritty, but it doesn't make sense to me, and it makes me very worried about where we are today. It was also about an angry and a frustrated electorate that demanded change, the magic word, change from the status quo. And that meant change away from the Biden-Harris administration. I've been arguing forever that if you really wanted to change, a woman of color, really? No. The argument is she was tied at the hip with a president who was perceived to be a failed president, and that truly, truly hurt. It's also about the nightmare of a dysfunctional information system, overwhelmed by the internet and by social media. Never would I have ever predicted what has become the main source of news and debate. I think someday, not too very long from now, we're going to see no presidential debates. We're going to see them bopped from podcast to podcast to podcast. We're going to see them take it out on X, God forbid, and other social media. This is where we're going, and that we are going there concerns me, looking at how far we have come, or maybe gone, in terms of just breaking down all of the traditions and the norms of how we communicate with one another. It was also, I'm convinced anyway, that it was about the MAGA loyalty to a cult of personality, coupled with racism and sexism throughout the electorate. I believe that Donald Trump gave us all permission to become bullies. And a lot of people have taken advantage of that, not us, but a lot of people have taken advantage of that. It was about, a little aside, when I looked at the election results and saw that there was this innate racism, this innate sexism, which we knew was there, but now it was writ large, I sort of felt like Barbie must have felt when she came back home and saw that Ken and all his macho followers had taken over. Think about it. We're not that far away from that, or from The Handmaid's Tale, if you think about it. And I also think what we saw was just a soupçon of machismo. I mean, there it is, writ large, if you think about it. It was about the inability of Biden, Harris, and the Democrats to communicate a voter-friendly message. Okay, Biden started telling everybody about what he had accomplished, and Harris sort of picked that up. And I think the sad thing is that when she was asked on The View, what would you change? I can't think of a thing. Wrong answer. I think that's when that brakes started to pull back on whatever momentum that she had. You can't just say, we're wonderful, if you don't feel it. If you, the voter, do not feel wonderful about what's going on. You've got to couple that announcement, that discussion of achievement, with an acknowledgement that the middle class, the working class, I guess, really needs more to make life work for them. And voters did not see that from either Biden or Harris. Voters did indicate that they were concerned with the future of democracy. The exit polls showed it as either the first or second issue of concern nationally. And that's what Harris was pressing, but voters were more intent on electing a candidate who, quote, feels your pain, end quote. And that's not only economic, but cultural pain. And that's another story completely. Let's face it. Now, do you think that rural voter in South Succotash, Pennsylvania, was ready to line up behind, as I mentioned earlier, a San Francisco liberal, a woman of color, running for the highest office in the land? And by the way, Donald Trump is 2 out of 3. He won against 2 women. He lost to the man who ran for president against it. I don't think we're going to see that kind of a transformation. Certainly not among women, and men, heaven forfend, no. Donald Trump got 45% of the women's vote. He got over a majority of white women, and which absolutely astounded me. And I think it really did astound the Harris campaign, because they put all their money on getting women riled up and out. And by the way, the turnout for this election was lower than the turnout of 2020. And this mandate that Trump is crowing about, it's really not a mandate. In essence, Harris voters stayed home. Trump was about where he was in 2020. But you saw what happened among Latinos, among African American men, among people, voters in general. It was a good turnout, but it wasn't the turnout of 2020, and I think that really obviously hurt Harris, and gave Trump another lie to spread. And he's done it, and he's done it successfully so far. We can get into the weeds of the campaign during our discussion. But let me first, I'm going to take a look, just a few more minutes, to give you some idea of what the Trump administration 2.0 means nationally and for California. Now, you'll remember Trump's insistence that he would be a dictator, if only on day 1. I don't know exactly what that means, but it makes me extremely nervous. Trump has promised a variety of things on day 1 of his second term, and that's only the beginning. And that's basically what we'll take a look at, because we would be here until the next election if we guessed about where this administration is heading. And we can talk again a little bit more in detail about that later on. It's true that much of his agenda is going to take some time to implement, but there are things that he can do to get moving immediately. And I think he will likely do them to get moving. I mean, my God, he's almost got his cabinet picked already. That's probably one of the fastest appointment processes that I've seen in a long, long time. Now, some parts of his agenda, particularly his promises to eliminate taxes on tips, overtime, on Social Security benefits. He hasn't yet announced that he's going to eliminate Social Security, but, watch the space, as they say. All of that will require the Congress to act. That's not impossible. Certainly not now. I mean, he'll have the support of this so-called trifecta. The Republicans have captured the White House. They have captured the Senate, and likely when the day is done, they will have captured the House. And they have shown their willingness, their courage in just taking what Trump says and run with it. Although it's interesting, I think there's a message that the Republicans in the Senate may be trying to send out. They did elect John Thune as their leader, and he hasn't been kissy-kissy with Trump at all. And I kind of get the feeling that Trump tread a little bit too strongly on the independence and the tradition of the U.S. Senate. And this is the message that his Senate is sending to him. Many of his key promises can be enacted unilaterally via executive order. He don't have to do nothing to get anybody's support. He can sign an executive order. And he'll be also able to issue pardons. And I wonder who will pardon first. You know, anybody want to put a bet on that? And he can also fire government officials. And he can do it as early as day one. He's already indicated that he would fire Special Counsel Jack Smith, who's long been on Trump's enemies list. And today the reporting is that Jack Smith is looking seriously at getting the hell out of there before Donald Trump takes office. I don't think that's such a bad idea, quite frankly. Some of his more readily achievable promises are related to, guess what? Immigration, exactly. And, oh yeah, we can talk about that. And that is an area in which the White House and the executive branch of government really do have significant stay. That includes Trump's commitment to building what he and his choice for borders are have boasted is, quote, the largest deportation force, end quote, in the nation's history. He's also promised to cut parole, which allows immigrants to spend a little time in the U.S., temporarily leave here, often for humanitarian reasons. And he's pledged to sign an executive order, that wonderful magic wand. But remember, executive orders can be lifted by his successor, as, watch it, he will be lifting executive orders that Biden has put into action. He also has to remember, but I don't think this is going to make any difference to him, that parole and birthright citizenship, which he has already said that they're going to look at very closely, is enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Now, I mean enshrined, it's Constitution. I don't know if it's going to make any difference. It's terribly hard to amend the Constitution. He can't just send it through the serfs in the House and the Senate. It's got to go to states as well as the Congress. But so far, I've gotten no indication that he really cares about that, and we'll see how it works. And then there's the fate of other big, long-term projects. I mean, the list is gobsmacking, really. Abortion rights, Obamacare, tariffs, climate change, NATO, Ukraine, LGBTQ plus rights, and, of course, the future of our democracy. But notice in what order those priorities came. He also pledged to take executive action, quote, banning schools from promoting critical race theory or transgender insanity, end quote. Thank you, Project 2025. Now, Trump has pledged again to pardon the January 6th guys, the rioters, quote, if they are innocent, end quote. Yeah, I can't imagine who's going to decide what innocent means, can you? I mean, okay, fine, whatever. And me, he'll say. I'm innocent too. We're all pardoned. It's going to be tough, but he will find a way, I think, to make it work. And again, he can do that day one of his presidency. Now, I'm not going to go any farther, any more deeply into the horrors that might happen. We don't need to. That's just a brief overview of Trump's possible impact on America, on its government, its politics, its policies, its culture, its values. Trump's America will not present a pretty picture. And it looks like California is going to have it even worse. I mean, California sued Trump's administration over 100 times during his first presidency. That's the use of our tax dollars. But that's fine by me. Trump truly hates California, its politics, its international leadership on environmental and other issues, and he despises its governor, Gavin Newsom. Newsom, whom Trump refers to as Gavin Newscum, has been a foil for Trump over several years already. And of course, Gavin also has been a strong supporter and advocate for first Biden's campaign, then Harris's campaign. And of course, there's no love lost between Trump and his defeated opponent, Californian Kamala Harris. And not to mention his annoyance with California's newly minted Senator Adam Schiff and Speaker Emeritus Nancy Pelosi. And you heard Trump say that the major goal of his presidency is going to be revenge. I don't know what he can do to them. They're both going to be in the minority in Congress. But that certainly will color the way he looks at and decides for or against California's requests for, like, money. Speaking of which, let me briefly take a look at some of the obstacles, hurdles facing California getting the feds to bleed money. Well, he could cut off federal disaster aid for wildfires and ultimately, I assume, earthquakes. Yeah, I hope not for a while. Presidents have extraordinary power over disaster aid. In fact, Trump has already threatened to withhold wildfire funds unless Governor Newsom goes along with Trump's environmental policies. He said that in California. That's one of the things we're looking at. Now, access to reproductive rights still in California, despite our state's protection, could be threatened. And basically, particularly with regard to medical abortions. Women and doctors are already stockpiling abortion meds and contraceptives. In what could be a real blow to the University of California and other California universities, Trump's White House could reduce federal funding for research in policy areas that are not supported by Trump. For example, climate change. Won't that be fun? Or they could tie funding, again, to his political goals, like reining in teaching about race. And California has been progressive on both fronts. Trump's immigration policies, mass deportations, raids, detention camps, border closures, and God knows what else, could most significantly impact LA County, where about one in three of the residents are immigrants, and 8% are undocumented. The fear's already scheduling It's already turning people into frightened human beings. It's really, it's awful. Now that's just an example, one little example, several little examples of California's potential problems. And that's why Newsom has already launched a preemptive strike, can you believe this? To attempt to shield California from Trump's agenda. They're not waiting until it happens this time. They're being proactive in keeping Trump from basically taking everything he can away from our state. He's already traveled to Washington to huddle with the national Democratic leadership and California's congressional delegation. I haven't found out yet whether any Republicans in the delegation showed up or whether they were invited to show up for the governor's meeting. But they're now getting together to plot a defense also. It's called a special session, a special legislative session, and it's primarily to increase funding for legal assistance to protect state policies from the incoming Trump administration. I mean, heaven knows what the full barrage of MAGA demands will entail. This is just a couple of little places where, again, he can start immediately to play games with the Golden State. Oh, by the way, this is kind of cool. I like this. It's kind of poetic justice, but along with the stuff that Trump will likely dump on California, the once and future president has given Governor Newsom a rare gift: the ability to remain front and center on the national political stage as the Democrats' most vocal and vitriolic anti-Trumper. This, just as we head into the 2028 presidential race. Not bad positioning, Gavin. I'm sure he's not quite as upset with the results of the election as we'd like to think he'd be. But I don't know. I didn't ask him, you know. And, oh yeah, what that signals, here we go already. Welcome to the permanent campaign. And this too, thank you, will impact what happens to us. Well, there is one thing, one little sparkle of, I wouldn't say exactly good, decent news, and that is in less than 2 years, when we approach the midterm elections, we should have a pretty good idea of where we're heading as a nation, as a state. And that will be the first chance, the first real chance we'll have to change what looks to me to be a very hurtful direction. At least one house of Congress will have to be freed from the MAGA cult and its ugly, divisive ideology in order to make that shift work. It's not an easy task, and it's an expensive and a politically bruising one to boot. Well, now that I have cheered you up, it's your turn. Where do you think Trump 2.0 will take us from here? What do you think it all means? And do you have any questions, any comments that you'd like to share about living in Trump's America, where we've been and where we might be, where we might be going? Now, mind you, there will be a quiz. So, thanks for listening, and let's go. And you can be the moderator, my dear. Thank you. I'm going to let Judy take the responsibility of not choosing somebody.
We just do it, we pass the,
Okay. Sherry, thank you for that very concise and distressing.
Sorry about that.
Right. My question is, what is going to be the impact of this mass deportation that he plans on the food industry? Who's going to pick the vegetables? Who's going to pick the fruit? Who's going to work in the restaurants?
Yeah.
Isn't this going to be a really negative impact on the food industry?
The short answer is yes. Period. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a movie, I think from the 70s, maybe from the 80s, called A Day Without a Mexican. It's brilliant. Look it up and watch it. And basically, all the Mexican workers disappear for a day, and everything stops. Sure. There was a friend of mine, her brother's best friend has a farm somewhere in the Midwest, and this guy voted for Trump, and the brother said, why? This guy's workers are mainly Latino. Said, how can you vote for Trump when, if you do, you're not going to have any workers, and if you can get workers, you're going to pay a whole lot more for them. I still voted for Trump, but people choose not to believe what they don't want to. Thank you very much. What they don't want to believe, and that's the problem that we face. But sure, already we're seeing what's happening not only in the food industry but other industries as well. The possibly good news is you just can't turn a key and do mass deportation. What's happening now, and I don't know whether it will hold, I think it will because the final decision will always be Trump's, is that they will go for the crooks. They're going to wait as long as they can to separate families, to pull people out by raiding workplaces and homes. Trump understands that is not what Americans want. The fact that Americans want illegal immigration curbed is much different from they want them kicked out. They want them put in camps, if you will. So it's going to take some time to get that done. And if he tries, I think if he tries to speed it up, and the message in his appointment so far is that A, immigration is the major policy priority, and B, the people that he has appointed in charge of it, including Stephen Miller, alone should tell you where it's going. It's going to be tough, but that doesn't mean it won't finally happen. My guess is the big one, how do you put Americans, we did it in World War II with the Japanese, how are you going to put our country's people into camps? I think politically that could be a real danger. In fact, if you think about it, it might be, from everything that I've read about and talked to you about, it doesn't preclude that it might not rebound negatively to Trump, or maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part in the long run.
Yeah.
Another
Okay.
question?
Well, I have
Susan
yeah, thank you.
Davidson.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree with your analysis more. I thought it is exactly, and I'd like to say, do you think, in my thinking about all of this, and I've read, everybody and listened to as many people who I think know what they're saying, I think that Obama's election by this country was an anomaly. That is because I think that what played, other than, yes, I think social media and the fact that people are poorly educated civically and they don't read newspapers, et cetera, we can go on and on. I think we're a racist country, and I don't think, and misogynist, and even though there are lots of other countries that have elected women, including Mexico, which I know she's Jewish. I know, but I mean that's what I think, and I wonder if you also agree with that, because as thrilled as we were twice that he was elected in this environment, and I understand that the environment at that time was slightly different, and people were looking for a change as well when he was first elected. Don't you think that that was somewhat of an anomaly?
Define anomaly.
It's going here, here, there.
Oh, I don't know if it's going to be an anomaly. I truly do not. Other factors do come into play: the candidate, the campaign, the money, the message. Obama was, shall we say, a safe black president, and he wasn't a woman, and I think that.
Yeah. Pass it to Susan.
I've got it.
Oh, somebody else got it?
It's here,
Sorry.
way over, then Susan.
Thank you
I don't think Susan should be allowed.
thank you very much for your speech.
Thank you.
I really loved it, and I cried through most of it because I'm getting used to that mode. I took to the phone on Wednesday to try to volunteer for agencies. I wonder, I was the 45th call waiting in line for ACLU. What agencies would you recommend that we might not have thought of that we could? I'm talking about licking stamps. I'm not talking about becoming speakers for them. We will do anything. We wrote postcards. We can do mail, whatever.
Well, I mean, ACLU has really started a real push, and it's working. They are getting a lot of new members. Of course, Planned Parenthood, if you want to get really specific about the issue that you care about, there are innumerable non-government agencies in and around LA that you can look up on Google.
How
do we
look it up?
Well, just, Google, what are some advocacy groups on the issue of or for in LA County, LA City, and see, and start there.
Hi, my name is Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Thank you for your presentation this morning. I spent some time in Arizona knocking on doors for Kamala Harris. I find Trump, like most people, a completely vile human being, but my eyes were really opened during my time there. And I have a slightly different take from a little bit of what you offered. It seems to me that most of the 70 plus million or 80 plus million, or some of the 80 plus million people that voted for Trump really were thinking about something much more simplistic. And they shared that as we knocked on their doors.
What was it?
Their rents are going up, the price of food is going up, and their salaries are stagnant. And what they want is to break the system, which is not working for them,
Exactly.
and start over. Now, we disagreed about who could best break the system or what it means to break the system, but what I think I was really struck by is there was only one person on the campaign trail who was offering to break it. And again, we may disagree, but Donald Trump was the only person offering to break it. And throughout her campaign, Kamala Harris really offered to strengthen sort of all those boundaries that would stop people from Trump from breaking it. And people perceive that to be more of the same, which is not working for them. I'm getting to my question, I promise.
No, I think it's a good piece of analysis.
Yeah. I was listening this weekend to Nancy Pelosi on a podcast called The Interview. It's part of The Daily. And she spent most of her time denying the fact that the Democrats were absolutely crushed in this election, which to my mind, and a lot of people's minds they were. We lost,
Perception.
okay, but still. And I guess my question is, the people in Arizona cared little about identity politics. They don't care about transgender rights. They care a little bit about abortion if it affects them, democracy, whatever, I've got to pay my rent. Who is it in your mind that is really working to rethink the Democratic agenda so that it's focused maybe more in a centrist fashion? People like Richie Torres from New York is sort of an interesting voice in that. But I'm worried about 2028 and all the elections that will follow for my kids, and the last thing I want is J.D. Vance as the president. So I ask
We
you.
may not even vote for him, and he may become president if Trump doesn't last the first term. But I think you made a very important point that I should have made, and I'll take to it now, and that's about the death of identity politics. The Democrats relied too much on, we got the Latino vote, we got the black vote. Not anymore. The major split in supporters is education. Mainly white, mainly male, but not really totally male, non-college educated Americans are Trumps. The Democrats get higher college educated and above and are more diverse, but the division is not a racial one or an ethnic one as much as it is an economic one. And that's when I said that the Democrats never either got that or were able to communicate that to voters. And that they didn't feel as one with the voters. One voter indicated, well, yeah, I voted for Trump because he's for the working man. That's, you know.
Sherry, how much blame do you lay at the feet of Joe Biden
A bit.
waiting too long and not having a real nominating process with the Democratic convention?
What gets me is how he could do such a brilliant job in, what was it, January, in the State of the Union. Man, I thought, that's it. Guy's gonna get reelected. Then comes June, and that debate. What happened? People didn't even trust what happened. I think he bears a bit of the blame. He sure does, in the sense that he did wait too long. People insisted they knew nothing about Kamala Harris. But the argument goes, if it had been a year earlier, she would have had time to present herself, to lay out what she might do, to give voters more of a sense of who she was. And, you know, maybe even she might have begun to separate herself from Biden. So well, yeah, that's a possibility. I'm not sure who that might be, to tell you the truth, but I honestly don't know. I mean, it brought me back to 1968 when Vice President Hubert Humphrey refused to separate himself from President Johnson's stance policy on Vietnam. And he finally did it in September, and the race was close, but he lost, and in large part because he did not immediately separate himself from President Johnson's Vietnam policy.
Oh, okay.
There's a similar dynamic, I think, at work there.
Okay. I also thank you very much for appearing here and for your presentation. Given that inflation seems to be have been a very top concern for the population, both well-heeled and not. Inflation now has already gone up, and
Actually going down.
majorly, but and like Chase has already lowered their interest rates. They're, I forgot my train of thought here.
Welcome to the club.
Well, and of course, with this tariff, what I understand, you know, would fill a thimble, but that also would really push up prices. Do you think that those who less well-heeled, who voted who voted for Trump might at some point sort of soon begin to rue the day when they
I hope so.
yeah. Okay, well, that was it. Okay.
I mean, but that again goes to the inability of the Democrats
Nice job, Judy.
to convince voters of things that are easily convincible. I mean, but it's distrust in government, it's a distrust of institutions, it's a lack of economic understanding, and it's also this, and I think this pertains to the whole dynamic of this presidential campaign. President Clinton once said that strong and wrong beats weak and right. And that's where the Democrats found themselves.
Okay. On a
Next question, Beverly.
Thank you. On another scary front, there's talk of military purge and tribunals and changing the requirements of the Army. How do we stop that?
It's a good question. I'm not sure he can do that. He will be able to appoint the chief of staff, and I think he'll pick somebody. Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Amenable to what he wants to accomplish. But I can't. The military takes an oath, and it ain't to Donald Trump. It ain't to any individual. It's to the nation and to the Constitution. So we'll have to wait to see how the military responds if that happens. And I wouldn't be surprised if he tries. I just wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look at the guy that he appointed to be Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
I guess Sean Hannity wasn't available. I don't know. I mean, he's making a laugh out of the cabinet. But he's also making a very pliable bunch of yes people. And he's sending the message that he's in charge.
Sherry, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you think that the Democratic movers and shakers, the VIPs in the party get it, that that we didn't feel the pain, that the MAGA people feel that we did not feel their pain?
Exactly.
And do you think that they get it so that we can move forward from here?
Not yet. And again, that's something the Democrats are going to have to consider when they do an autopsy of this race. And quite frankly, it may not make any difference. Well, at the beginning of the century, a reporter wrote a book called "What's the Matter with Kansas?"
Yeah.
And
When I saw the results of the election, I realized one reason for my depression was that I had such high hopes that for a change, there'd be a change. And the result, of course, was devastating. But then I looked back. I thought, well, how did we react to situations like this before? There have been more extreme, if you don't forget it, more extreme situations in this country, far more than happened just now. This nation was separated many times before this on the issue of slavery. And it got to the point
that's the only one I can
we
think
had
of.
a civil war where 700,000 Americans were killed by each other. far more devastating than what we thought now. Families were torn apart, and Lincoln was our president. By the way, at that time, the Republicans were the liberal party,
Yes,
not
they
the
were.
Democrats.
The party
It
of
was a new-
Abraham Lincoln.
It was a new party, and Lincoln was a liberal person, and had a lot of new legislation passed. But he made one big mistake. He thought he was going to lose the next election, and he appointed, got elected, a vice president who was a right-wing person from the South. And
Who are we talking about now?
I'm talking now about Lincoln at the time that he spent. We had, even with Lincoln, when he was, the day after he died, we had again the right wings taking over. So I think when I look forward and then look backward, I don't think what happened this time is as devastating as happened before. I think you, of course, pointed out the most important situation for us, and that is there's an election in 2 years.
No, yeah, that's
And
when,
you
you
pointed
gotta start
out
looking
very
for it.
well that is so important for us.
Okay. Well, let me get back to the point I was trying to make. That's an interesting analysis. God love you. I mean, that's cool. That.
Did he ask his question?
Anyway, the point that I was trying to make was, in this book, What's the Matter with Kansas?
One person
Tom
does
Frank
this,
pointed out
otherwise it's a mess.
that Kansas should have been Democratic because of economic issues at that point in time. But they went Republican. Why? Cultural issues. And that's where MAGA is, quite frankly. They will use the economic issues as part of the reason that they support Trump. I don't know how. But it's truly a cultural, as you said, a civil war. It's not geographic. And it may not even be ideological. It has to do with cultural values and norms. And that's very difficult.
No, I didn't speak it. Okay, when I look back, I see the Republican Party, just no matter what Trump does, they're sticking up for him, no matter what.
Most of them. Those
Most
who
of
don't
them.
are not in
Most of them.
are not around anymore.
Even if they think differently, they, and I was hoping that maybe they didn't want to come out and say, what some were brave enough to say against Trump, but that when they went to the booth, they would vote, use their head. But when Biden didn't have a good debate, the first debate, before the evening was over, the Democrats were getting rid of him already. That wouldn't happen with the Republicans.
I'm
Trump
not too
could
sure
do
about that.
anything under the sky, and he could murder somebody on Fifth Avenue. And when he first said that, I thought, what an insult to his supporters that they would still support him at that time. But he was right.
Well, it's a cult.
He was right. And also, when Democrats were interviewed and everything, all along, Biden did a lot of good things, but nobody knew about it.
Well, that's the problem.
Nobody advertised.
That's the
it.
problem.
When the media was interviewing Democrats, I would say, why don't they say this?
Well,
Why
they
don't say
did, but
that?
people weren't
That-
listening.
Near the. I'm not asking a question. I'm venting.
I told them they could vent.
No.
Go
I
vent.
thought we were allowed to do that. I thought we were allowed to do that.
Yes, so you are allowed to do that.
So.
But time is of the essence.
And one other thing. She had an ad out that said, to the women,
Yes.
that they don't have to tell their husbands
Yes.
what they're doing.
I have to think that was a
And
really nice
I
ad.
thought to myself, that is not a good ad. That is
Why?
not. No, to tell. I think that's putting women down. you know, that they have to keep it secret or that they can't. I don't know, I didn't have a good feeling about that. And then when I heard that that he got the women's vote, I went back to that.
45%.
That wasn't the only thing.
We have,
I didn't take that much time.
Good morning. My name is Daisy. It's a pleasure to meet you. And
you too.
thank you, Ms. Judy, for inviting me. These elections are very important to me. I'm a proud U.S. citizen, and I have people in my life that are very important to me. I love them so much, Ms. Judy, Dr. Ken, Susan, and the people here represent the America I know when I first came here. I agree with you when you said machistas, Latinos, voted for him, and I think they're gonna regret it. And when he starts breaking apart families, doing mass deportation, I think we're gonna learn. The
I
people
think
that
you're
work,
right.
they're gonna learn their lessons.
In fact, Tom Homan, who is the choice for ICE and Borders is on record as supporting separation of families. And the argument that the Republicans have begun to use is, oh, we will not separate families. They will have a choice.
Yeah, because
They can separate themselves, or they can all go back to Mexico.
yeah, and my question is, because California is a sanctuary city, aren't we protected somehow, immigrants?
Well, I mean, we could be a sanctuary state, but federal laws rule.
Will we be punished if we continue to declare ourselves a sanctuary,
Could be.
asylum? We could be punished by our president.
We get a lot of federal funding. We got an awful lot from the Biden-Harris administration.
I think I'm going to take it for a quick second.
Okay.
I was thinking throughout the campaign and a little before at how poor we are. I want to do this as an analysis, not blame, but what we can learn from this as messengers. I think the Biden administration did a brilliant job of getting legislation through.
They
And
sure did.
Really, from my opinion, that's my opinion. And I'm glad you agree. And
But, I'll get to the butt after you finish.
let her ask it.
But no one spoke to the successes of the Biden administration. Biden himself was not a great communicator. Okay, that's okay. He could do a great speech from time to time, but he was not. But many people in his cabinet were. And I think what we have to learn as people who want to, if they have change in our future, is how to communicate the successes in a very careful, organized way. But, do your butt.
Well, but much of the brilliant, sweeping legislation that the Biden-Harris managed to get out of what was a very rocky road comes to fruition and will when Biden is gone and President Trump can cut the ribbons. And he will take credit for it. Any president would do that. I mean, that's the way the world runs.
I have a question regarding your comments about.
We're one mic today, only one. Please, can we just do this and then I'll get there, I promise. Please.
I like being fought over.
So my question has to do. My question has to do with your comments about California and Newsom.
Yeah.
California, according to the maps that I looked at after the election, we have many, many, many more people voted red than ever before, which is telling us that there are issues within the Golden State. You can't
in my opinion, and I'd like yours, please, Newsom is progressive, wants to do a lot of change, take care of a lot of people, feed people, healthcare people, but the populace is more and more saying enough. Okay, we can't afford to take care of everybody. We need to start taking care of ourselves. So what do you think will happen in the future? You say Newsom is putting himself in position probably to run, but he's so far to the left that we'll wind up back where we are now with a Republican in.
Well, remember that Newsom cannot run again. Two terms, and yeah, right. He can take off anywhere else, but he can't run for governor again. Interestingly, we will have a gubernatorial election. It will be an open seat in 2026, and the buzz is now around Kamala Harris running for governor. And there was a poll in today's LA Times which indicated that there are, 9, 10 who have declared or may be running for governor, and it's not a solid support, but she's got the most support of any of the other candidates. But people don't like California. There used to be, and I think there still is, not a formal caucus, but an Anybody But California, ABC, group of members of Congress who would just love to just stick it to us in any way that they can. And it's going to not only remain, it's going to get to be a little bit nasty, I would assume, under President Trump. I don't know. I'd like your input on this, but somebody gave me this contest for president. Gavin Newsom versus J.D. Vance. Here we go. I happen to believe that J.D. Vance is at least as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than Donald Trump.
He is, because he's.
I mean, he's
Okay.
way young.
Okay. Never.
I was going to, while you were speaking, I was going to mention that Pete Buttigieg has done a yeoman's job for the Republicans. He's communicated. He has the ability to communicate, and you can tell that the Democrats understood that and liked it because you couldn't turn on your television to MSNBC or CNN at least, and he's also done Fox, and there he was. But again, are we going to be sophisticated enough to vote for a gay man? A gay man who is married?
Nope.
I don't know. Is it still the domain of the Kens of this world?
On the way over here this morning, I was listening to NPR and heard that John Thune was elected
Yes, he was.
Speaker, and I thought Trump wanted Rick from Florida because he said that he would go into recess. And I want you to look at the future. Do you think that the Senate will go through confirmation hearings for this, as Hillary called them, basket of deplorables, cabinet appointees? They all look so unqualified for what he's appointed them to do.
Well, no, I don't think that they're going to put up any kind of a barrier. In fact, what Trump is trying to do, and it became an issue in the election for the Senate Majority Leader, is to demand that he can make recess appointments.
Exactly. That's what I'm
You have to
asking.
You don't have to be before the committees. You don't have to go through the process, the nomination process. It's a limited amount of time, But all he has to do is just change recess.
Do you think that this new speaker will do that and go in line?
The speaker is the speaker
Oh,
of the House
oh,
of Representatives.
well.
But he's a majority.
Majority leader, do you
Senate.
think he will do that?
Sounds, well, it'll be interesting to see what Thune does.
He didn't say he would do
No,
that.
But that doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
I know, okay.
It will be interesting to see, and it will be the responsibility and the decision of the Senate whether or not to hold those nomination hearings. And Trump is pushing hard. Don't do it. It's a message from Trump. I'm in charge. It's what they call in political science the unitary executive. Everybody reports to that one guy in charge.
Let me ask you what you think has happened to the notion of the greater good or the social contract
You got
or
5 years.
those things that we thought were part of our American, way of life. It isn't anymore, as far as I can see. I think it's very selfish. It's what does it do for me? What's it going,
Exactly.
and
Well, the bottom line question has always been, what have you done for me lately?
I know.
That does influence voter behavior. But I have long yelled at my colleagues and me in education. It's, first of all, we don't teach civics anymore. And when we taught civics, it was a lie. Go vote and you can change the world. It takes commitment. It takes energy. It takes wanting to know and do something about where we are and where we're going.
Ken,
That's not it today.
Ken, take a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Sherry, you mentioned that one important thing is for the Democrats to communicate to the Trump voters.
To everybody.
My perception is the Democrats are communicating on FM and the rest of the country is on AM. We cannot communicate with them that way. They don't read the New York Times, they don't read the Washington Post, they won't read the LA Times, and we don't have 1,000 or 10,000 rural radio stations on AM. Nor do we have the access as much to Fox, for example, as they do. How can we deal with that?
Who are we? The Democrats?
Yes.
Well, I would say, I see the focus turning more and more to the podcast as a means of political communication. But then you'll notice that Kamala Harris apparently tried to schedule an interview with Joe Rogan. She didn't do it. Either she decided or he decided she wasn't going to go on that very powerful podcast. What happened to the Harris campaign was basically they went on podcasts like Call Me Daddy, which is, for us women who, wring our hands about stuff that most Americans aren't thinking about at this point in time. And Trump was all over the conservative network. Don't underestimate the power of Fox, even though for a while there was, an estrangement between Trump and the Fox network. And I don't, you gotta use the communication tools that are being used right now much more effectively by Republicans. And you gotta talk to people, and not just the people who agree with you. And apparently, in politics, perception is reality. And the perception is, at this point in time, that it's the Democratic Party that deals with the elites. It's ironic if you think about it, because if you look at the demographics, the Republicans are now the Democrats, as they once were, and the Democrats are the Republicans, the rich people, the highly educated people, the white people, as they once were. It's fascinating. It's been turned around. And that's, that comes right from what's the matter with Kansas. They don't care about the economy. It's cultural issues.
You know, we're going to have one or two more questions. You can tell by the energy in this room how much feeling we all carry about this experience, and we all seem to have taken it to a very internal place, external as well. My question, or what keeps circling in my mind as I reflect back, excuse me, is if he had let go earlier, Biden, and if he had given permission to Kamala to throw him under the bus and to be her own person,
Yes.
would, in your opinion, would that have made any kind of a difference? And does she have the stuff, the internal stuff and the knowledge to, as she went on View, to answer that question with more depth and more cogent thinking?
Well, I don't think her thinking was not cogent. It wasn't listened to, but I have to tell you, I've never been a fan of Kamala Harris, but she grew, and she grew immensely throughout that entire campaign. And had Biden left the stage to give her more time, to get to more people, things may have changed. And there was also the good point brought up. We don't know that she would have won the nomination. I think she would have, because there would be so many people running, and she is the incumbent vice president, and she would have, I would assume, the endorsement of the sitting president. Whether or not that was good or bad is another question we need to study. But I will never in my entire life understand the results of this election. I mean, I understand it. It's everything that we've talked about it. But good God, it's the prosecutor versus the convicted felon, and we have made the convicted felon the president of the United States of America. I cannot get my head around it. I'm sorry.
So I think I get to ask a question, and the question is, we've really talked about all of these barriers that are potentially going to be coming up. I'd like to dream a little bit with you, and I'd like, because you're so broad-based and so informed, are there any stopgaps that we might be able to be entertained with? For example,
Did you hear what she just said?
Yes, midterm elections.
And apparently, the word from the Trump people is, I guess the chief of staff mentioned it, the new chief of staff, the first woman in history to be chief of staff to the president.
No.
That they're
She didn't
looking at
I had something
the
to say.
term, because you can only have 4 years,
You'll
as
hear
being not
what
4
I'd like to
years,
say.
but 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they can get
Yeah.
everything done they can before the midterm election.
So what I'm actually referring to are literal stopgaps. For an example, we all know he wants to stop solar. He's not going to give any money for solar energy. But then on the other hand, do we hear that all of those in the South that are manufacturing those things, are the Senate and the Congress won't let him do it? Those are the kinds of stopgaps.
What do you mean won't let them do it?
And well, they're going to have to approve, whatever laws he wants to pass. So those are sort of inside stopgaps that are also economically based, perhaps, because those the southern states, have their feet in a lot of opportunities that could potentially be a stopgap. That's the wish I'm sending off to you.
Not while there's a very loyal Republican majority in both houses of Congress.
What about their constituents?
Pardon?
So the word on the street is their constituents are going to have a voice, and
Well,
that's where I'm
the
going.
constituents down there quite likely would be in favor of not instituting emission standards and the like. And Trump's already come out and said, we're going to get rid of regulation. We're going to get rid of environmental standards. the only.
Well, it's back to economics
and
again,
you know,
though.
they'll go to court. Everybody will go to court.
Yeah. Never mind.
Trump has really stacked the judiciary, not to mention the Supreme Court. The Biden administration is trying like hell to get every judicial appointment they can through before the new Congress comes in. That's going to be a problem. That is going to be a big.
Suzanne?
Okay, well, I've got.
Other people who have something to say to Karen, to Sherry, will be able to say.
I'm a Karen.
But people, we have lunch,
Yes.
so we can talk,
Yes.
we can talk at lunch, but who has
Okay.
questions?
Well, two quick things. One is the fact that the Constitution has not said that a convicted felon is a disqualification. How do we there's a future to our country, we hope, and this is horrible what has happened, and that how can we be sure in the future, I guess, to change laws or whatever so that the president qualifications are different from what they are now. The last thing I want to just mention, and I may be naive, is that what the fuck has Trump done for the working class? I mean, if all those poor, neglected people who feel they haven't been seen, he had 4 years to try to do something, and don't they know that nothing great, and all the Biden and Kamala Harris stuff, really, I thought Kamala had some very lovely, good things she announced she was going to do for the working class and entrepreneurs.
Very good question. And again, part of the blame lies with the Democrats. Either they didn't articulate that reality or people didn't care.
Make it straight and quick.
I mean, it was the economy stupid, but it wasn't only the economy stupid. It was the brosphere. The men, the argument is men were getting a little bit nervous and insecure about where we were going as a country. And it involved